At 11 minutes after 9 on Thursday night, we received a 911 hang-up call to Yamacraw Village. And I'm going to be somewhat circumspect in some of the information I give out because of the details of the crime, the nature of the crime, and also some of the investigative tactics that we ended up using. So we responded over there, and what we learned when we arrived there from the people, it had been a 911, pick up the phone, dial 911, and someone then hung up. When no one responds, we automatically dispatch a police car. A police car responded, and upon arrival learned that at least 2 and possibly more individuals armed with firearms had gone into a unit in Yamacraw. They had asked for a specific individual. When he wasn't there, they had forcibly removed from the house a 27-year-old female. And they took that female with them in the car and left the scene. So very quickly, what we had was a kidnapping, and we began working that case as a kidnapping and cleared that scene as quickly as we could. Very common in kidnapping cases for someone to come back and do counter surveillance and check to see if the police had been there. So we cleared from there as quickly as we could, and we began running that investigation from a remote site. Very quickly, we had contact with the hostage takers, not the police. They were calling family members of the woman that they were holding, as well as individuals who they knew were related to the male that they had asked for. It took us a number of hours even to identify who that individual was. Obviously, you're challenged because you're dealing through a third party. You don't want the bad guys to know that the police are heavily involved, so you're giving a victim a script as they're talking to the hostage takers and trying to work through a third party. So over the course of several hours, we worked to try and identify who was the focus of this, and what we learned at some point late at night or early the following morning was that this entire incident stemmed from a drug deal gone bad, that the individuals who had in fact kidnapped this woman had been involved in a drug deal with another individual and had lost their money in the course of that transaction. So they wanted their money or the person who had ripped them off for their money. For us, we were focused on getting back the victim. That's our key focus, is to get the hostage back alive and safe. We worked throughout the night on this, again, trying to work the contacts that they were making, and they broke off contact with us sometime around 4 o'clock in the morning. And just went quiet. And at that point, we're out looking and checking and working historical databases and trying to put together associations, etc. By about 6 a.m., we had identified a couple of individuals of interest and some houses of interest out in Hinesville, and with the assistance of MACE, which is a drug enforcement entity out in the county. You probably know what the acronym is.
Liberty County.
Liberty County is...
Right, multi-agency crack enforcement, I believe is what it is.
With some support from MACE and some excellent support from the Hinesville Police Department. It helps that a former Metro police officer works for MACE, so we all had him on speed dial. Set up a surveillance out on those houses in Hinesville. By early that morning, we had reassembled and we had brought in the United States Marshal Service was assisting us. CNT was with us from early on. Obviously, it was a drug case, and the CNT intelligence piece of it was incredibly helpful and necessary. And we also had the FBI here working with us last night, or that night. So on Friday morning, they initiated contact again with family members sometime early in the morning, around 11 in the morning or so, and contact started to be made again. Obviously, as this goes on in time, we're increasingly concerned about the life of the hostage. And we're constantly looking for what's called proof of life. Put the hostage on the phone. Is the hostage alive? And we actually had a proof of life call at 10:54 a.m. About 2 hours later, we were able to take 2 of the subjects into custody. The U.S. Marshal Service was able to surveil them and then take them into custody right outside of Hunter Army Airfield off Montgomery Street. And they were taken into custody and brought downtown to be interrogated. At that point in time, we also had we continued to have the houses out in Hinesville under surveillance. We observed a male individual leave one of the premises, and shortly after he left, a female ran out of that house, went to the neighbor's house, and called 911. We had our victim back, our hostage back. The end result of this is we have all 3 suspects in custody. We continued working this throughout Friday night into about 5 a.m. Saturday morning, executing search warrants. Again, Hinesville was incredibly supportive. Hinesville PD. Metro forensics teams went out and collected evidence and processed that crime scene in Hinesville, where we know for certain that our victim hostage was held for some extended period of time. We're very grateful that we got her back alive. She was, during the course of this event, sexually assaulted by the suspects. And I mention that because you're going to read about that in all the court filings and the charges that have been filed against it. Obviously, we are not providing her name or the specific location where this occurred. So I think that's sort of the broad framework of this. Obviously, we had upwards of 60 officers working this from 9 right after it was reported on Thursday night, right straight through quite a bit into the day. Sometime Friday, people would go home and get a couple hours sleep and then come back. And the detective division and obviously other agencies working with us in support. But that's sort of the broad framework.